All right, here we have what I guess you'd probably refer to as an above average size pool, and as you can see, an above average house. I like to probably call this somewhat of a miniature castle. You'll do jobs down to the little homeowner pool that can start as low as $25,000, $30,000 pool. It's a great add-on that you can do. With the average systems, the average kits ranging between $2,000 and $3,000 for your average kit. This kit would probably be up closer to 3,000. Just obviously consult the shopping cart for your pricing. Just use a Tapcon bit and use stainless steel clamps, which you have shown here. Now the advantage to doing stainless steel clamps is that it holds the tubing securely in place versus down here. I'm going to show you in a second, Mike, if you actually show them what the plastic clamp does. The plastic clamps don't hold it very secure into positioning, and the problem with that is that if you'll come down here real quick. The problem with that is that your threads right here, you must have everything else that's not that face of that thread behind the line. So as you see here, if you shoot directly down, you'll see that that thread is going to protrude right past the tile. So you're going to have a real clean install. To where this tubing is going to all be under grout, but you must instill, this is the most integral part, is that the tube, the clamps, the everything is behind that tile, and that only your thread sticks out over there. And what that's going to do when they put the coping on there is that's going to create a grout line of about 3/8 to half. Inch, and it's just that's part of the way of doing this install. Now there is another way that can be done if the homeowner wanted it. It's a lot more work, and I personally don't like the look of it. Is that you could notch this whole thing, so everywhere once you've laid this all in and laid this all out, you'd have to notch your tile, but as we all know, when you have a really pretty tile like this one, it's not going to look good, and your end result is going to be, if you look closely, the tile is going to be chipped. I've had a couple pool builders that absolutely demanded that it was recessed down in the tile, and I can show you those pictures. You'll see them on our website, where I don't feel like it was as good of a finished product as this will be. But there's something for everyone, and what that would involve is, just like I said, just notch the whole way around, notch down in there. Usually there's going to be a bigger bed, and it's going to involve a lot more. You'd actually have to notch into the cement the whole way around, and it's really going to add a lot of time to your install. It's going to go over behind this particular pool house, where they're going to probably hook it up to the AquaLink. All the 2010 model pumps are going to come with remote controls, but for the purposes of having everything all in one controller, you probably want to have your electrician powered onto the AquaLink. Anywhere that you're going to be under cement, you want to use stainless steel with compression fittings, and you're always going to pressure test your job before you leave, because you want to make sure that you've got all those compression fittings nice and secure and that none of them are leaking. If one of them leaks under that pavement or those coping or under the deck right here, you're going to have big problems over time, because that's obviously going to erode out your deck and cause cracking, and no one wants to come back and replace a deck. So it's very, very, very important. These jobs can be very, very easy. You can install them in some of them as little as 3 hours with 2 guys, but if you don't make sure that you pressure test this and check the fittings, we'll talk about that in a second. When we fire this up, you'll cause yourself a lot of nightmares. But this particular thing is all going to be deck here, so we're going to run blank stainless steel from where we stop our last nozzle. So this is the welded tubing, and then we're going to use couplings everywhere we change. So in a second here, you're going to have blank stainless steel that's going to run down in this trench all the way over to where it gets out of the deck. Now, if this particular pool, if the deck stopped here, and then the rest of this was going to be grass, then you just need to run stainless steel out to here, go ahead and like stub it up to where it sticks up out of the ground. Maybe wrap it off with a flag. We actually flag ours with a fluorescent flag so that in case any type of excavation is done out here, that we've at least marked our stuff, so that you don't come back at the end of the job and turn it on and you have no water coming out of your nozzles. That would be very bad, and someone's going to be paying to take up a deck. So you know, 10-cent flag is usually a pretty good way to go. If the deck was to stop here, like I said, you'd stub it up, mark it with a flag, and then when you come back, when the job is basically finished, you go ahead and finish digging your trench over to where your equipment is, and then you could switch to a flexible high-pressure tubing, which is a lot cheaper than the blank stainless steel, and just not necessary unless you're underneath a deck that you're never going to be able to get back to. The stainless steel that we're using actually has a pressure rating of 10,000 psi. We only operate at 1,000, so it's very, very, you know, you're talking 1/10 safety rating as far as there is no safety involved in this, but it's more of just a 1/10 of the working pressure, that if something bad ever happened, that would, you know, essentially cause a leak and then could cause erosion. You know, so more than covered there. The high pressure tubing that you'd switch to if the deck was to end here, it would be rated for 3,000 psi, which is still 1/3 rated and never have any problems. We've got our blank stainless steel tubing here, and here we have a compression coupling. These will all come in your kit or can be bought a la carte. I prefer to choose the best way to do this. I mean, there's obviously many tools you can use. Is a pair of channel locks on the center nut that holds the actual body of it in place. And then what you're going to do is you slide this on, okay, and then it's going to push on like that, okay? And this is very, very, very important to make a good bite. Is it's going to go on about 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch onto that thing. Now, the by the book says that you're going to go 1.5 turns past finger tight. So right now I've got it finger tight. So I'm going to take my wrench, and again, this is just the easiest way I find to do it. And I'm biting right there. Now I'm having to apply a little bit of muscle, okay? Now I'm really applying some muscle. That's 1 turn, and now I'm going to go 1/4. And you know, between 1 1/4 to a full half is going to be a good bite. I mean, that's on there. I mean, you'll know when you got it. Now on the tubing side of things, this is the same principle, same 1 1/4 to 1.5 turns. Now the key to these fittings is that when I push this in, okay, these are actually a really snug fit, but sometimes they'll be a little bit loose, okay? When you go to actually tighten, your nut, okay, you must make sure, okay, that when I go to tighten this, okay, make sure that I haven't kind of fumbled around with this and that this line hasn't slid out a little bit, because like I said, sometimes it's real loose, and if it slides out even a little bit, when you go to tighten it down, you're going to waste a ferrule, and it's not going to make a good connection, and you'll see that it leaks. So right as you start to bite down on it, make sure that you pushed in on it one last time, and then make sure that you're watching it and you're holding it with either, you know, your hand or your elbow, or I'm using my armpit, and make sure that it's not, you know, sliding out on you. So there, we're at our 1 turn, and now we're at our the flexible tubing. You'll find actually you get that full 1.5, because that's 1.5, and now it's nice and biting. We're going to go ahead and leave this connected, and what we're going to do, our particular deck, if you'll pan over to here, ends where I conveniently accidentally stepped in our ditch over here, but we're going to stub ours up to where it's going to be sticking up out of the ground, and we're going to coil up the flexible tubing when we're done until at the end of the job. We'll talk more about that in a second. Alright, we are now over behind the pump house here, where we're going to place our pump unit. We've got our weatherproof housing here, which right now we're still kind of under construction. If you want to put it on a pad, you can. However, this housing actually has about 1 foot legs that elevated up off the ground, and typically, you know, most equipment is elevated with 1 foot off the ground, so it should be kind of good if you just want to leave it on the ground. It's going to be personal preference. You can buy some concrete pads, you can make your own. That's always an option. This particular house is a kind of an interesting house to show you. We also have some mist fans that we'll show you here in a second that they wanted to add on to the system and do some fans. And our line has been previously run on another day, and it's actually coming out of the wall right back here. And that is this tube. We sleeved it because it's inside of a tube, so this is just a cheap irrigation tubing that you can find at Home Depot or Lowe's. Typically Home Depot is the one that actually has this particular type of tubing. And then we ran our high pressure tubing inside the tube here. And this is actually, if we were going to, you could power this all on one pump in a couple different ways. If you obviously wanted it all on at one time, which is nice and simple, then you would of course just tee it into the line. If you wanted something a little bit more fancy, depending upon your electrical abilities or certifications that are required in that area, you can also put, we sell high pressure outlet solenoids, and those are going to run you somewhere in the neighborhood of $100. It'll be on the website. And you would put that, you would tee off your main line, and then that would basically, we have the coils available at 110, 24 volt, 220, whichever you need. And you could also mount that inside here and not have to worry about, you know, electrical housings for all this. And then of course you would just have your electrician or yourself, if you are an electrician, wire it up to where when you hit that button, that would also tell that high pressure solenoid to open, so you could have your fans run independently of your main pool fog. Another important thing is our filters here. What I've done before we started this video is we turned on the hose and bled the lines. A lot of times in construction there's going to be dirt in the lines, especially if you get out here to actually plumb this in at the end of the job. Go ahead and run the hose for quite a bit of time to allow any debris that's in the lines because, you know, again, it's a new home, to get out of the lines. So bleed everything. I'm going to show you more bleeding in a second. But bleed before your pump. Even though we have filters here, you know, you don't want to put more stress on them than you have to. So I poured out, you know, let it run for about a minute, then I plugged it into my filters, and then actually I even let it run again for a few seconds through the filters to let any type of dust that's in there get out of the line. Then I've quick connect just pushed into the fitting, into the inlet side of the pump. And now on our outlet side, we've got 3/8 inch high pressure line. So that comes out of the, we've drilled a hole for actually both things to come out of the side, right there. And so that's our electric, this is our high pressure. Our high pressure runs through here into our ditch. When I'm done here today, I'm going to quick connect and unconnect that. Always leave yourself more tubing. Because it's always better to have more than less, because they could have plans for something to go here, so you always, it's so much easier than having to add a coupling to just leave yourself some extra tubing. That way if they make me move that housing over around the corner, I've got enough to where I don't have to use a coupling. But when we're done here today, we're going to coil this up, and we're just going to simply bend that stainless steel up so it's nice and out of the dirt. We're going to put some tape around the flexible tubing. That way they can, you know, if anyone's out here digging or whatever they're doing, they're not going to hit our tubing, which, you know, this is a high pressure tube, but it still can be cut pretty easily. So we're going to wait until we're the last ones out on this job, and then we'll come back and we'll bury it this extra, you know, 5. All right, we've got our pump on, and as you'll notice here, we got a lot of water coming out. What you're doing now is you're bleeding the lines. You want to bleed every nozzle that you do, no matter what kind of system, for 2 to 3 minutes minimum. Right here you'll notice the stainless steel tubing, we're actually going to end up making a bend here just to kind of get it out of the way. I chipped off a little bit of the concrete just so that it stays out of the way, and like I said, you can kind of manhandle it a little bit. So you just get 2 hands on it and you can easily put a bend in it. So I'm not real good leverage right here, but it's not that hard. So we're just going to go around right now, and we're going to screw all these nozzles in. We're out here a different day, obviously a little bit wet, but you know, the situations like this one currently, when you're under construction, sometimes power and water is limited. So what we've done in this instance is I've got a walkie-talkie, and we have our guy all the way in the front of the house, we've run 3/8 high pressure line back here so that we can test this. You're obviously going to get a line loss. I'll talk about that in a different video. You want to bleed your lines as you see going here before you put any nozzles in. Definitely want to bleed for at least 2 to 3 minutes before you start putting nozzles in. We've already actually done this ahead of time, so but typically what you would do is you'd start obviously at your nozzle that's closest to the pump, and you'll just keep screwing them in, and that way it's going to keep forcing the pressure further down the line. All right, now we're fired up, and now this is one of the most tricky things to explain. Right now, because we have such a line loss in the line pressure, because we're about 500 feet away from here, we're getting about a 400 psi line loss. So the mist you see here is actually only performing at about 500 to 600 psi. We've got 95 nozzles out here at a 0.008, and we're using a 2G. Once we actually have the pump located back here, we'll get our full 1,000. But here's the thing that is most important is before these coping guys that are standing over here to our left going to start applying this coping, this is very, very imperative to explain to the pool builders is that you cannot
put that coping down until this is all pressure tested. Now the difficult part here is that because you have all this mist and flowing around, is that you've got to look very close at your compression couplings. You've got to really like almost cover a nozzle up and get right down there and look at each individual compression coupling to make sure that you don't even have one drip. Now once it's obviously put the coping spring down, nothing's ever going to touch it. It's a non-moving fitting. You never have to worry about it again. But the key is that you really got to look closely because there's so much mist that it becomes difficult to see a drip. So what you're going to do now at this stage in the game is you're going to go around and inspect each individual coupling, including your end at the very end, and you're done. You just installed your very first poolfog system, and we'll see you in the next video. That's good.